I'm bored. Let's talk about James Gunn and the DCU. I want to start off reminding everyone that I have defended the decisions James has made with the connections between Superman, Creature Commandos, and Peacemaker Season 2. I think it's fine to have stories that exist with different tones, in different environments, with different levels of comedy, different levels of maturity. I think that's okay. I don't have a problem with that inherently. I think that's fine. However, I defended it because of statements made by James in regards to how he was setting up the DCU. And then I saw this exchange online today, and I feel like we need to address this. So the first part of this says, is season 2 going to set up the movie? We'll probably see Lex in one of the last 3 episodes. This is in regards to the Superman sequel, Man of Tomorrow, where people believe we're going to get some sort of Lex-centric story. And we'll talk more about that on the Nerdcast tonight. This followed up by a response where it says, not true. If there's projects in between, it's going to build up to it, but not directly. And then I know LOL. And the next response is, if the projects in between don't heavily feature Superman aside from cameos or other brief scenes, it could be true. And then James follows up with directly. Now, let me explain. Well, first of all, I want to say I don't have an issue with direct connections between projects. We see it in the MCU, and I've never really had an issue with that. I think they've handled it well sometimes, not so well other times. We have examples of that. But the thing is, I was under the assumption that the DCU wasn't going to do these kinds of things. And maybe I misunderstood it. But let's look at the quote from James previously where he talked about this. He made it clear the DCU will still feature some elements more akin to the MCU, like a shared baddie across a handful of films, but this will seemingly be kept to a minimum. And here's the important part. This is about a connected universe. We're world building, we're not story building. We're not writing one story that has a beginning, middle, and end. We're creating a universe in which people can go and join into this universe and experience it. It is much more like Star Wars than Marvel in that respect. And that is kind of why I have an issue with the way things are working right now. It feels like that connectivity that is supposed to be kind of loose is feeling more and more tight. It's like a tight pair of pants at this point. And I'm not really sure if this represents what we're going to be doing with all of the DCU. Because if you look at the way things are working now, and we still could get announcements for different movies and films, but we had Creature Commandos, characters in Creature Commandos, Rick Flag Sr. Was present in Superman. And then Superman went directly into Peacemaker with Rick Flag Sr. as well. And we saw Superman and Supergirl at the beginning of that. Characters from the Justice Gang were featured in that. So it feels more like it is a linear type of storytelling from thing to thing to thing, instead of like Star Wars, where characters just may or may not show up in different projects. And we know we're going to be going into Supergirl and then into Superman, Man of Tomorrow. Now, we do have Clayface kind of hanging out over there. We still don't know how much of that's going to connect with anything that's going on with these other projects. But I was under the impression that characters could jump in and out, but stories would not jump in and out. So when James says something like this, let's pull the conversation back up again. When James says something like this, it makes it seem like it is MCU. Like direct connections, that's not like Star Wars, that's like Marvel. And that's all it's really been since we started this new universe. Even going back to the Suicide Squad and how that connected with Peacemaker Season 2 and Superman. So I'm getting the vibe that that his statements about them not being connected that way either have been changed at the top end. Like, did David Zaslav or Peter Safran come in and say it can't be loosely connected, it has to be directly connected? You have to make connections that are completely solid between projects because that's what we want. I wonder if that was a mandate from the top that he was supposed to do that. Is that what's happened? Or are these changes that James has decided to do himself to make things more MCU-like? Because again, it's really not giving Star Wars at the moment. Clayface is the one thing that feels like it could be similar to that Star Wars thing. Now look, in the comments before, you're like, well, he didn't say everything was going to be that way. He did say some of them might be more like the MCU, but we're talking about like a 90% like the MCU so far. Now, directly linking into Peacemaker from Superman wasn't an issue for me because I'm like, you can choose not to watch it if you don't want to. So it doesn't have to be family friendly because it is connected to Superman, but that doesn't mean that Superman is going to be intrinsically connected to Peacemaker. That was my assessment. But now it seems like Peacemaker is going to directly connect into the next Superman project, in which now it does make me question, like, do you expect this to be watched by everybody in the family? How do you expect people to be able to engage with these projects that directly tie into something else if it's going to be like TVMA? I'm throwing the question out there because I don't know. I don't know the answer to it. If it were loosely connected and not directly connected, I'd be like, well, you can still ignore it. You can still ignore it. You don't have to watch it. Doesn't matter. It's not a big deal. And I would be fine with that, and I would move on without any issues. But the fact that he is saying directly connected has me concerned that there's going to be important things that happen during Peacemaker that are going to show up in the next Superman movie, and people are going to be lost on that story because they didn't, or they weren't able to watch Peacemaker, either because of their ages, because they don't like how violent it is. There could be many reasons, but it does bring up a little concern for me. So I'm going to say right now, this is a light concern. This is me going, maybe there is something more here. But I'm not screaming the sky is falling. I don't know if it's going to be that bad or what the situation is in regards to that. But the fact that Peacemaker Season 2 directly connects to the next Superman movie is one of those things where, like, how big of a deal is this? And are people going to be able to skip this series and still go into that second Superman movie without a lot of, as they would call it nowadays, homework? I'm not opposed to homework. I'm watching Peacemaker Season 2. I love it, but I do realize I'm an old person, and it's not a show that the entire family should be watching together, at least in my opinion. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on this down below, and we are going to talk more about this on the Nerdcast tonight. So we'll see you then. Take care.